The August 13th, 2024 City Commission meeting to order. Who is calling roll tonight? Wyatt, would you please call the roll? Okay.
I'll go ahead and call roll. Mayor Adamczyk.
Present.
Commissioner McCullough.
Yes.
Commissioner Opel.
Here.
Commissioner Mata.
Here.
Commissioner Minton.
Here.
Mayor, we have 5 present, and a quorum of 3 met.
Thank you. Will you please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Those wishing to make comments not related to any items on the agenda are welcome to approach the podium. You'll have 5 minutes to speak.
I think we're just on legislative nights. We do that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're at a work session tonight, and you all will need to decide if you want to allow public comment after the budget.
I move we allow public comment.
Second.
It's been moved and second to allow public comment. Commissioner McCullough.
Yes.
Commissioner Opel.
Yes.
Commissioner Mata.
Yes.
Commissioner Minton.
Yes.
Mayor Adamczyk.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Gary, I say you were the only one signed up, I believe.
And we'll take those comments after our presentation, Gary.
Oh, all right.
So we'll go ahead and make our presentation, and then we'll turn to the public for comments.
Okay.
On the work session?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If you have items that are not on the agenda, the 2 legislative meetings are when we allow those every month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is related, so.
Yep.
Well, you'll hit the buzzer if it's not related.
I think you'll be all right.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, we're bringing forward the 2025 budget topic this evening. We do have a number of slides. All the departments are here this evening to present their 23 actuals, 24 projected, 2025 budget numbers. So we're going to dive right into this. They've presented a lot of this information to you before, but we want to review and make sure we satisfy any questions you may have. And then at the end, we'll talk about some scenarios for the mill levy and revenue and expenses. So with that, we'll turn it over to the airport and our director, Brandon Keyser.
All right, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Good one.
So we are broadcasting audio, but we're having trouble getting connected to the video. So we're going to work on that, but I think you can proceed.
All righty, I'll proceed. So I started off with this wonderful introduction slide.
The monitors within the room are all showing what's back on that TV. So.
Yeah, we have video in the room, right?
Yeah, well, everybody's going to need to look up at the screens.
Correct. We're trying to get it to broadcast the screen correctly. The audio is broadcasting on Facebook and Channel 3, but the screen is not yet.
Okay, I'll proceed. So starting out, this is the slide for the airport expenses in 2023. Our actuals are about $1.9 million. For 2024, we're estimating our projection is about 194 for this year, and our 2025 budget is a little over $2 million. Of that, personnel makes up 57% of our budget. That's our 19 full-time employees that are doing all different types of things out at the airport, and our contractual and commodities are about $900,000. So when talking about revenues, for 2023, we budgeted around $400,000, and we came in well above that with close to $600,000 in revenues. And I will point out, during 2023, we were also closed for that 5 months. So we're really excited when our revenues substantially exceeded our budgeted amount. So for 2024, our budgeted amount was $654,000 in revenues, and we're projecting as of right now close to $750,000. And our 2025 budgeted number that we put in there for the revenues is $710,000. Any questions on?
Is that a conservative estimate, Brandon, or are you
We're-
expecting?
It's very difficult, where to track where customer demand goes. So obviously when we have really strong demand, our revenues go up. And so that number is fairly modest. It does include, that we have those new 8 hangars that are going to be coming into or starting collecting revenues in 2025. That project's moving forward really quickly. And at the next commission meeting, I'll be bringing a grant from the state that is going to cover the local share for that project. But that is also including that. But if we have another record year, obviously our budgeted or our projection on our revenues will probably exceed our budgeted amount. And so, why we're driving, why we've got so many, or our revenues are constantly going up is because of this year. As of right now, we're at a 6% increase in employments, commercial employments on above our 2019 year, which was 77,000. So as it stands now, we're anticipating that over 80,000 people will board a flight through Manhattan Regional Airport. Passenger demand each way, that equals about 160,000 people that's going through our terminal. And so if you're planning on travel, please book now at flymitchk.com. Of course, I'm going to throw in that little sales pitch.
Is the cost of the new airport landing strip in bond and interest? That's where we pay for that? Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then here's our general fund summary. Any questions? I know there's a lot of departments coming up, so I'll be here all night if you have any questions for the airport. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Stephanie Peterson, Community Development Director.
Good evening. As Brandon said, Stephanie Peterson with Community Development. We presented most of this information to you a couple weeks ago. You can see here our actuals, then our 2024 projections and our 2025 budget. I would note that our 2025 projection does include time that our current staff will bill towards the Community Development Block Grant Funds to our program to administer that. Our 2025 budget does not include any time that would be allocated to administer that program. The pie chart shows a breakdown between our personnel expenses, contractual services, and the commodities. I did break out IT charges from that contractual just to give you a sense of the only aspect of this that really I have control over are the gray sliver here and then that very small orange one. Everything else is either personnel or supporting personnel in other departments like IT. And then this, I just gave you a sense of who we are as community development. So we have 2 divisions, the development review and our planning, and then we have kind of our administrative branch here in the middle. Our development review planners, there's 2 individuals within that. We typically have an intern currently that is vacant just due to the budget, but they process all the private development requests from the community. In 2023, those 2 individuals processed 109 applications. So far this year in 2024, they've processed 85. Not all of those make it to you. Some of those are administrative. They're also the liaisons to the Planning Board and the Historic Resources Board. Our planning division, again, 2 individuals there. They are responsible for all of our long-range planning initiatives like Aggieville, Beyond Tomorrow Downtown Plan, in-house efforts that these 2 individuals dedicate a lot of time to. They provide, their products are outstanding. And we're excited to show you a video they've been working on for downtown, and it's pretty amazing. One of our planners here, they are the liaison back to the Historic Resources Board. And then our shared responsibilities from the admin team and supporting these two divisions, reviewing the housing incentives that we just talked about last week, administering the Community Development Block Grant Program, managing the East Manhattan Gateway Plan, as well as maintaining our Manhattan Development Code, among several other things. And then I provided here at the bottom just our 2025 initiatives and how our team of 7 will support the initiatives that you see here. There'll be other items that probably come up as well during that time, but these are the ones we're tracking right now. And then it looks like we're doing continuing to add departments to this. Were there any questions for me?
Yeah, so can you explain kind of what's going on with the CDBG grant and how that's increasing the budget for next year?
So that's, the 2024 projection does include time. There will be probably 4 individuals that bill a portion of their time back to administer that grant. That is reflected in 2024. That is not reflected back in the 2025 numbers that you see here. Roughly, we can spend approximately $110,000 of our grant on administration. I don't foresee that you'll probably be able to take this $784 and deduct $110,000, maybe more like $90,000. We're still trying to get a feel for how much time it's going to take us to actually administer that program.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm just, because like, just trying to kind of piece together everything that's going on, so.
Yep. I would say that this is maybe the worst case scenario. If we were to bill 100% of all of our salaries back to the general fund, we do anticipate spending money on administering that CDBG grant, which would then reimburse the general fund.
So we
Stephanie?
have about 90 grand on the table. Is that a?
Sure,
is that
that's a fair estimate right now.
So Rena is like, whoa, wait a second.
No, you're fine. So that amount that Stephanie provided would come in as grant revenue to the general fund,
Right.
not reduce their budget.
Yeah. So
Rena.
how, I guess, where is the extra 50,000 coming from, considering we have fewer employees in the department now?
So the 2 individuals that were funded from CDBG, they never were reflected in our department budget.
Okay.
They were always just out of CDBG.
Got it.
So I wouldn't say this 2024 number is projecting that we're going to be billing a portion of the 7 individuals' salaries back to that grant, or however Rena wants to phrase it so that I don't.
Yeah.
So there's not, this 2024 number would be higher had we not made the change to the CDBG program.
Got it. Okay.
You know, we're not managers. We've got the manager over here, and he has to cut positions and that kind of thing, but we do set philosophy. And one thing this commission has been very, very interested in is housing. And so I'm very concerned that we're not going to have the CDBG going on, because that's one good way to help housing, and we've had such good partnership with Habitat for Humanity. And so I think, you know, some of these decisions to cut staff, there's no question that we don't have any say in that, but we do have say in what programs we want to see going. And so I'm quite upset that this is going away.
I would say that in October, we're going to come back before the commission with some ideas on how to approach CDBG as well as housing rehabilitation. At this time, we have not eliminated anything. We have to go through a formal process with HUD to amend our annual plan to do so. So that decision has not been made officially. We are not taking new applications right now until we have that conversation with you all on how you would like to proceed. But we'll have some ideas and recommendations for you in October at a work session.
But it does kind of lose a lot of federal funds and matching funds, and I just feel like when we make decisions to cut a personnel, you know, in a situation like that, in a program that we really, really are behind. I mean, we're behind housing, and we're talking about $8 million that we have to give to developers, and this is really a place to keep people in their home as they age. I mean, I'm kind of upset about it.
Just to summarize, we get over $500,000 every year as entitlement funds from the federal government. A piece of what we've been doing is rehabbing homes. The total amount of admin we have been putting towards rehabilitating homes exceeds the value we're putting in homes. We pointed that out in some correspondence to you all to give you a little bit of background as to why we want to take a look at this. We were taking federal money and paying employees more than we were putting into the homes themselves. So we lacked some efficiencies. We need to gain some efficiencies. Nobody's talking about doing away with CDBG. Nobody's talking about doing away with this $500,000. What we'd like to talk with you all about is how to do it in a way that doesn't spend so much money on people.
Okay, and I agree with that. And I'm not trying to micromanage, but I just want to say that I noticed your IT costs are $63,000. That's a lot for one department. I just really want to see us focus on housing that's reasonable. And, you know, we're talking about workforce housing. We don't want to build McMansions. We want to build stuff that people can live in and workforce, that kind of people. And we want to fix up those homes. And perhaps there's a better way, but it was sort of sad to also lose the money that was coming from Habitat.
Habitat was a contractor. We weren't receiving money from Habitat. They were bidding on projects that were going out. We're jumbling a lot of topics together. We'll circle back on a lot of these and talk with the commission on how they'd like to proceed. But I don't think you're expressing, or at least representing, the facts surrounding CDBG at this point in time.
Well, Habitat has a way to do things much less expensively than before when we did contracts, it was, you know, usually with somebody that was his job, his life. And so, you know, now Habitat has the ability to leverage a lot of hours from volunteers and workforce. That's all I'm saying.
Jamie?
I mean, mine goes to Stephanie. The 2024 projection, well, the budget was 918 for it, for 2024.
Correct. Yes, that's what I was getting ready to point out.
Because the revenues are booked in revenues, not in expenses. So it was 918.
Correct.
Or something like that. I do think there's some overall discrepancies in our number. This is a general statement. What was budgeted last year versus where we're going to end up are different numbers. So I do think we're kind of mixing up a lot of numbers sometimes, or there's just a lot of numbers at play when we're discussing things. I'm looking at Rena, sorry. Rena was like, yeah, shaking her head. So we were at 918 before any reductions this year. I don't know where we ended up after reducing staff or some reductions this year. But so we're going from 918 of budget last year to 784.
To 736. 737 is what we're anticipating to spend in 2024.
But that's after we've booked some of the revenue, right, from CDBG? No.
No, the development doesn't have any revenue that we track.
Well, I thought the CDBG,
So that will
didn't
be,
it get booked as a grant on the revenue side?
It
Rena?
will get booked as a grant on the revenue side once that money comes in for this new cycle program year. But this is a expense, and
Right.
this is what they're projecting in terms of their personnel, contractual, and commodities. It has nothing to do with,
Including the revenues that the expenditures I don't know how to say that.
it's almost an offset.
Offset.
We've moved away from really showing you budgeted numbers. This is about actuals and projections, because we are obviously drawing back our expenditures in order to get as close to our revenues as we possibly can. So when we're talking to you this evening, the majority is about expenses, either from an actual perspective in '23 or what we project through the end of the year. It is not a budgeted number. We budgeted $45 million
Right,
in the
which
general
is not a
fund.
realistic.
We will spend 38 to 39 million this year.
So basically, she's coming in a couple $100,000 under budget.
Under budget, sure, but from
Yeah.
an actual
Right.
perspective, year to year, we're above by 60, 70 grand.
Yeah. And then just a point of clarification, are the numbers that we're seeing for the budget, are they including any raises next year?
No, not in any department other than fire department.
Okay, and then are these including open positions too? I know that some of the open positions we like pulled
We've
out.
We've eliminated a lot of positions. If they've been in existence for over 18 to 24 months, we've taken them out. There are still vacant positions in the budget, and I think that totals about $1 million, or we can get you that total.
I mean, I do think just helpful in discussion if somebody has a position that's open, that's budgeted for, and that we're holding that's
Yeah.
helpful to know in the discussion tonight if somebody has something.
So we're not giving
don't
a
have
COLA or anything this year?
Not the numbers you're seeing.
Usually, don't we talk about that?
We can talk about it at the end when I show you don't have enough revenue, but yep.
Stephanie, because there's so much concern about the CDBG, can you just remind us of the budget cycle for that? Are those funds that you're applying for, grants that you apply for annually, or are you in a 5-year grant?
Sure. We receive an entitlement, so we automatically get an allocation every year from Housing and Urban Development. That the program year starts on July 1st. We still do not have our grant agreement for the July 1st program year. So we have pre-award authority that we can go ahead and our subrecipients can begin spending that, but we don't actually have that grant agreement. That'll run through June 30th. So every year, in the memo that was provided to you, that allocation has been decreasing since we first became an entitlement in 2010. It's the way that works is the better your community is doing, the less money that you receive.
Thanks.
Sure. We did not have any vacant positions that were reflected in our budget. This is for the 7 individuals that we currently have. That had 2 interns in there, but that's a minimal expense. Any other questions? Tammy.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tammy Bassetti, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management. Our department supports the entire organization. It's literally our function. We do that through recruiting and retention efforts, benefits administration for our group health plan, of which we're self-insured. We're also self-insured on the workers' compensation program. We manage the classification and compensation for the entire organization. We just did the total reward study with AGH in 2022 and did some work on that. We make sure that we stay in compliance with local, federal, and state regulations for employment and on the insurance side of the department. We're responsible for our human resource information system for keeping track of all our employees and data, timekeeping, and payroll. We manage all of the employee relations as well as labor relations and negotiations with the fire department union, participate and assist with those. We also help with organizational development and training for the organization. On the risk side of the house, we're responsible for the property and liability insurance for all of the property across the city that we own, as well as any of the claims that come in for property damage that's either done by a city employee or done to city property. We currently have 421 employees. We have, so far this year, we have onboarded or hired 73 regular full-time employees and exited 78 employees. So we have about an 18% turnover rate year to date, and a negative 0.5 growth rate in our full-time employees. Total employees, once you include seasonals at this time, is 781 employees. So on average, the human resources team will send out about 399 onboardings a year. We'll actually bring in 395 employees and exit about 300 330. It just depends on the year with all of our seasonal employees on top of the ones that I just talked about for our regular full-time employees every year. So we're staying busy helping get the people that the organization needs to serve the community. And our budget over the last 4 years has primarily been contractuals and commodities. And we, for 2025, we're budgeted for $170,997 in contractuals and commodities and $796,000 for people. We have 8 employees that are paid with that and serving the organization as I just described. With that, I would stand for any questions.
How, so we did the total reward study a couple years ago. Sounds like we're gonna probably pause that a little bit for the next year or two. As an HR professional, how do you see that affecting retention and or recruitment?
We've already seen some exit surveys this year that are talking about the anticipation of not receiving raises or increases, and people are looking for new employment due to that. I think it's hard to project that just because the state, I mean, people that worked at K-State went years without getting increases. I think that it will have an impact on our turnover, and the more it impacts turnover, the busier human resources and other people across the city will be. But I can tell you that I've already started seeing it in exit interviews over the last couple months as we've been having these conversations.
Okay. Are there things that you might see that aren't necessarily salary related that we could implement to help that?
I think in June, we talked a little bit about the top 5 reasons that employees left, and I would have to pull that back up, but pay kind of fell down, and it's starting to come back up again as the conversation has been happening here for several months.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, it dropped to like number 5, and we're seeing it more.
We're not talking about raising salaries, but we have been talking about the fact that we have vacancies that are very important, like in finance and engineering. Are we offering enough to those people? I mean, we need to get people in finance to get our audits done.
It's hard to say that for sure.
You have a lot of applicants.
Reno would have to speak to that. I don't monitor every applicant pool specifically. We've had more applicants, qualified applicants with most of our positions, but she would have to speak to the quality of candidates and the accountant applicant pool that they just had.
Evening. With our accountant positions, I do believe that the number and quality of candidates have increased and improved. With our higher level positions, they're limited in terms of the number of candidates and then qualified candidates that are applying for them. So we are working with management and HR to see about revisiting some of those types of positions that are vacant, and possibly reclassifying positions as well to see about how we could recruit better.
How many positions do you have vacant?
For the 2024 budget, there's 5 vacant positions.
In the finance department?
Just within the
In the finance
Yes, ma'am, in the finance department alone.
So there isn't salary increases, but you're increasing by 14%. Is that positions that are been open that you're planning to fill, or what's the?
I believe most of that is contractual and commodities, because we actually shifted a position from human resources into customer service so that that person would maintain a position because they're paid from an enterprise fund. So we're actually reducing.
I'm just looking at your projected versus your, To the graph?
I think if you look at the budget detail sheets, there is an increase on the personnel side.
Okay, that's what I was
think-
trying to-
I think Tammy has some promotions she's been budgeting for, and potentially that risk manager position, but she and I have both talked about that.
Okay, so it's,
possibly not
it's
occurring.
it's filling positions,
38,000 in
or
that.
Yeah.
new positions or positions that were open in the year
Correct.
before. Okay.
Any other questions for Tammy? Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Katie Jackson, City Attorney. I'll go quickly through mine as well. I have some background on our two divisions. The Municipal Court and the City Attorney's Office are the two divisions that comprise the legal department. One note from the Municipal Court is their cases from the first half of this year are 60% higher than the cases last year, but they have over the last several years been recovering from a dip from the pandemic time and from change in an RCPD administration. So it's not that crime has increased that much, it's just that we're getting more cases sent to us. In the City Attorney's Office, we provide the general legal counsel to the city. We've had a 10% increase in work in the same period as last year. I have a chart with our budget, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. We went up in 2024, but that was primarily due to the personnel, the implementation of the pay plan. In 25, we're kind of adjusting back down. This chart shows you what comprises our budget. This is both divisions, and in 24, we're almost 80% personnel, and it's just over 81% in our 2025 budget. If I were to describe with you why I think that we could go down a little, which I think those numbers, I don't know, changed from when I put this in, but we are going down. It's because we are, for the first time, fully staffed for all of our budgeted positions. We're actually one half full-time position less than our full budget, but we hadn't been fully staffed for 12 years. We don't intend to add any staff. We have been using, at the municipal court, we've been using technology to expand our operations, to be more efficient without adding personnel. I have to give an aside here that this year the Municipal Court of Manhattan won the 2024 Tyler Excellence Award for using technology to enhance justice delivery. Our court administrator, Jennifer Holmes, we started working on that in 2019. She was instrumental in the changes that we've done to go to a paperless court. It's much more efficient. As I've said, we don't have to add staff because we're working through technology. In the city attorney's office in that time period, we've been doing more internal, using software to track items and to work more quickly as well. We have no capital outlays. We're not going to hire any outside city legal services, which were in our budget in the past. Our increases that you do see in the individual line items are things that we really can't control. Software increases, contractual services, whatever salary increase the commission approves for the city at large, we have no budgeted salary increases other than the general city increase if that occurs. We will have some increases in our public defender contracts and pro tem and conflict counsel fees because those are going up everywhere. What we'll be looking for in this year, I think we can maintain our current level of services with our staff. We have a long tenured staff. Our challenges in the future would be that as wherever those caseloads at the municipal court go, what that means for our staff in the long run. We have some long tenured staff at the municipal court that we expect transitions to occur in the next 1 to 3 years. So we need to do some succession planning. Those people are obviously very experienced and very efficient. So we'll be looking on that. So we're just going to be dealing with increasing workloads. And as I said, we will be having to return to the commission to have you revisit the fees for pro tem and conflict counsel services because we're having a really hard time getting pro tem judges and public defender conflict counsel because our fees are not high enough. And then the last thing that we'd like to do in the future from a budget perspective is to be able down the road to provide more staff training and development. That's the thing that I've heard from our staff this year, that they would like to have more opportunities to get better at their jobs. Do you have any questions for me?
What's a pro tem judge?
So if our judge can't be in court, and pro tem is just temporary or
Okay.
replacement if you look at
Right.
it that way. So we do have, staff judge, Judge Jim Keppel, but if he can't be there or he's out, we have to have a pro tem judge who covers for him during that time. And then on our public defender side, we have a independent contractor public defender. If he has a conflict or can't be there, we have to have conflict counsel. We're required to have that to fill in for him too. And so it's not a large amount of money, but it is something we're going to look at increasing because we are losing our pro tem attorneys. They're not, we just need to pay them a little more.
Got it.
So,
Okay.
any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Rena Neal, Director of Finance. We currently have 14 employees within the Finance Department, 7 of which are part of the accounting, budget, cash, and debt management teams. The other 7 are within utility billing and permitting and licensing within customer service. 4 of those employees are 3 front counter staff, and then the customer service supervisor, and the other 3 are funded by water and wastewater utility funds. This screen reflects our 2023 actuals, our 2024 projected, and then 2025 budget for the finance department, broken out between finance and customer service and those total amounts. I know at the June 11th meeting, there was conversation about our particular budget and how our actuals and projected align with what we are planning for the budget, but we kind of talked about that a little bit. Our budgets include vacant positions over the years, and so I do want to give you that information for 2023. We budgeted $1,313,324 in the finance department. In 2024, we budgeted $1,437,188. And then for 2025, we were budgeting $1,236,126 for a decrease of $201,000 compared to the 2024 budget. As I mentioned earlier, we do anticipate needing to hire staff. Staff recruitment is extremely important for the finance department to accomplish these goals. We have the implementation of our ERP systems. We're currently in the process of the financial portion of the Oracle. We are also working through demos for permitting and licensing and utility and billing. We are already experiencing challenges with the financial implementation process due to the lack of staff within finance, but then also other staff within the organization. It's a large lift for the organization. We're working through that, but I just want to make you all aware that the ERP is a substantial burden on the staff. The 2024 audit, we are behind on our audits, and Commissioner McCullough has mentioned that tonight. It's our hope to have the 2022 audit complete by the end of August. We'll have a draft this week, and then the 2023 audit is underway. And then in 2025, we need to prepare for our 2026 budget as well. Again, staff recruitment is necessary to ensure the successful completion of the ERP system and then completion of our audits in a timely manner. Our budget broken out, $1.23 million between finance and customer service. 86% of our budget is personnel, and the remaining is contractual and commodities.
Is there any reason that the people doing water bills couldn't be paid for out of the water budget and the stormwater budget? I mean, it seems like...
They are, 3 of them are paid
Yeah.
out of the utilities, and the other 3 are paid out of the general fund. And they're doing a portion of utility billing, but also non-utility billing things as well. So a lot of permitting and licensing and things of that nature.
So, compared to the 2024 projected, are you saying most of the increase for the 25 budget is because of the ERP implementation, or a large portion of it?
It includes staff, also consultant services with AGH to assist us with completing the audit.
Okay, but it doesn't include like the actual, like the $4 million or whatever that we projected out for that?
So for the ERP, all of the departments have a portion of that going into their IT services. So IT services includes staff that we currently have, plus also all of our software and then devices as well. So
But-
each of
but-
our departments have a share of that.
But you still are, what I heard was you need staff to help you with the implementation of that.
Yes,
And that's
we do.
very understandable.
Other questions for Rena?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Chief French will come forward to present the Manhattan Fire Department. That also includes the animal shelter and control services.
Before we get started, I'd like to thank the mayor for last week taking the moment of silence for Tybo. Appreciate that very much. He worked for us from 2017 to 2019, so appreciate that. Also want to give a shout out to Rena, and I'm not sure who else in finance helped. If you saw one of my previous slides, I apologize, but finance came to my rescue, and so I appreciate that. Real quickly, I know everybody knows what our traditional service is as a fire department, but there are many other things that we do. A couple of those are highlighted. Storm sirens are a responsibility we have. FEMA, disaster coordination, we deal with that. We provide community CPR for the community, a lot of PR events, property maintenance, nuisance inspections, and enforcement of zoning, animal control. And then obviously we have a lot of specialized training that involve both hazmat and high angle and different types of rescue. This is a similar slide that I showed you a couple months ago. We reduced our staffing from 20 to 19 to help with the reduction. That's still a possibility. I don't recommend doing that in 2025, and our budget will reflect that. We have reduced our 2 full-time positions, and I say that we have currently we lost an employee here last week in risk reduction. We'll have a retirement in risk reduction, so out of those, we're going to eliminate at least one of those positions. And we eliminated an administrative assistant position and on the fire administration that we will not be adding into. So we'll continue. Overtime is our big thing. We spend $350,000 to $400,000, and when you consider overtime to include the training, our backfill, our minimum staffing levels, positions that we have within the department. And then I just wanted to real quickly highlight some of the things that are upcoming that I know you're aware of. The training ground master plan, the headquarters deferred maintenance that we have going on. I don't want to get really into that much tonight. It's a lot of bond and interest and isn't really with our general fund currently. And then I also want to talk real quickly on, we do have the 2024 code adoption that we'll begin to work on, and hopefully you'll see here in the near future, start that process.
Chief, what is the code, what changes are being made to the 2024 code?
We haven't started that process. What we'll do is look at the code, we'll evaluate it compared to what our current code is, look at all the significant changes, and then we begin the process working with all of our stakeholders, and we'll bring that back to you.
Federal.
Chief, have we ever done an analysis on what we spend in overtime versus what we could spend if we were more fully staffed?
We haven't done a full analysis. What we found over time is there's a correlation, obviously. If we're fully staffed, then we don't have near the overtime. I mean, that makes sense, right? And then based on our positions, you have to have so many captains on duty. You have to have so many drivers because we have those different positions. There are some different scenarios, and we can do that, and we can provide that here in the near future of an analysis of that. And we did that, I believe we did it in, I want to say it was roughly 5 years ago. We added an additional 3 drivers to the ranks, and we were able to show by the amount of overtime that we had spent, it'd be just as well to hire those positions.
Yeah, I just, it may end up being one of those things where like it actually does save us like, yeah, it doesn't look as good on the front end of the budget because we're budgeting more for personnel, but then at the end of the year, we look at how much we spent. I think it'd be worth looking at, especially when you consider, the fatigue of the firefighters and stuff like that. So I think that would be helpful information for us.
Appreciate it. There again, we have a lot of concrete issues that we will have to deal with moving forward. We've got steel plates out on the back concrete. We've got asphalt. We've got gravel. We've got dirt. We've got pulverized concrete. So those are things that we will have to look at in the future. Basically, we have taken over animal control. I shouldn't say taken. We've added animal control. So you can see to the far right, those are the numbers that indicate with animal control and our fire department budget where we stand. So in 2023, our actuals were 9.1 million. With the projected 2024, we're at 10.2, and the proposed 2025 budget is 10.8. Like most all the other departments, our costs are in our people, our contractual. If you notice, we have very little movement from 23 to 25. There's roughly $1,000 of change in that. The big expense in there is obviously our fleet and our IT, which is over $587,000. Of that, $751 for 2025 goes to fleet and IT. Any questions on that? This is basically how the animal control, if you break it out, this is what it's looking like. Basically, the budget is both the Prairie Paws contract of $358,000. There's a $4,000 mobile that goes with that, and then the animal control themselves at $258,000. One of the things that we added in there, this is 11,000 vet care, and what we're working towards right now is a contract to find a vet service if we need it. If we pick up an animal, there's some discrepancies with the shelter, currently the K-State Vet Hospital, and so we did set aside money in the future if we have to do it on our own. And that's all I have for you. Any questions?
Commissioners? Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. This is our budget for next year for the 2025 budget season. And the administration, we're hoping by that time we're going to have a new Public Works Director in there. And then bar none, we're hoping that we can recruit some of the engineers, some of the inspectors we need, and everybody for the streets and stuff that we need to do these budgets. So just taking a look at how did we get here? So our 2023 actuals are $5,468,000 roughly. This year we're projecting about $4,757,000. We're trying to hit that 13% reduction of the 2023 actuals, and it's a little difficult. Right now we're sitting just around about half of that. Of course, we haven't ordered salt yet, so a lot of that money that we're using to reduce the 2024 budget, we're keeping some positions open. I know that everybody's talked about having some positions open, but we're actually keeping them open, keeping those closed. So we have 4 maintenance techs down in our street division that we're not filling right now, so that we can save money using that. What's that do? I'm going to bring Dan up here in a little bit, and Brian's going to come up, talk about their individual divisions and how these things affect them at the same time. But the level of service is not as high as it could be. And, the other thing what we've done is we've moved a couple projects to the right. We're using street crews on maintenance projects instead of bringing it, spending that out of TST. And then we're also making sure.
TST?
What is TST?
I'm sorry, Special Street and Highway.
Okay.
I drifted back to my Joplin days. I'm sorry about that, transportation sales tax. But, and that tax right there is actually sunsetting in 2026. So the importance of that is that we can't use the special street and highway as a crutch even next year as we go forward. And I know you asked the HR director, how do people feel? Well, as these budget meetings kind of go through the ranks, there is an uncertainty that's there among people. And we keep, tell them, hey, we're going to drive on. I can't tell them what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen tonight, but, we're going to keep moving forward with the people that we have. And we got a little flex in there that we kind of build in as we move forward. But our goal in this year is to try to get to that amount right there where we're saving about $700,000 out of the budget. And I talked about filling the director row, of course. That's part of the position right now. We're saving money in this fund. We have about 131 positions in public works across the board. But when you take out all the special funds, water, wastewater, stormwater, and the fleet, then we're about 50 that are coming out of the general fund. I'll let Brian come up and talk a little bit.
Thank you, Lyndon. Mayor, Commissioners, Brian Johnson, City Engineer. I have the traffic and engineering portion tonight. Traffic includes not only the signalized intersections, but also right-of-way and permitting. So dumpster permits, utility permits, those sorts of things that happen within the right-of-way. As shown on your sheets there, we got about 80 signalized intersections, 16 pedestrian crossings, school zones, traffic directional signs also. In the engineering division, we have myself, city engineer, principal engineer. The traffic and civil engineering positions have been open for about 1.5 years now. Those haven't been filled for a while. Stormwater engineer is actually paid for out of the Stormwater Utility Fund, and we're going to talk to you about that a little bit more next week. CAD, the computer-aided design section, has 2 individuals, and we're fully staffed in that for probably the first time in 7 to 10 years. We've had a pretty difficult time keeping those people. We are fully staffed there, though. GIS also is fully staffed now. That position, we were down 2 people from COVID. We held those positions open during COVID to make sure that we can meet budget projections in. They are fully staffed. And just for your information, not only does the GIS department manage our GIS system, about 85% of what you see on Riley County's website actually comes from the city. So Riley County hosts the site. They put the tax information on the site, but most of the utilities and data that you see on that site actually comes from us. So our GIS division not only does the GIS, but they also do all of our asset management that you see on the GIS system on Riley County. We're budgeted for 5 inspectors. We have 2. We've been short inspectors for several years now, including a supervisory position. So my project managers, my engineers now are managing inspectors also, because we don't have that managerial position full. We have 2 surveyors on staff also. One does pre-construction survey, one does post-construction survey. So all of our as-built data is done to GPS standards so that we can put that into our systems, so we know where all of our water valves are, water mains are, storm sewers, inlets, all of those things. We have roughly 20 plus projects currently. For about 12 of them are being designed in-house. We're running at about $100 million of projects that we're managing currently. Former cities that I've worked at, usually engineers manage between 5 and 10 million. I have 3 engineers and we're managing 100 million. So that kind of gives you the scale of how short we are on personnel. Can I answer any questions?
How do you decide what gets done in-house? Is it just kind of a capacity prioritization?
There's some of that. Some of it is what our skill set is. We have engineers that have different sorts of skill sets. Some of it is very hard conversations with my staff about, what can you take on and what you can't. And sometimes you gotta look them in the eye and kind of get a feel for, you know, their stress level.
When we're having positions paid out of those other funds, is that as a transfer to the general fund, or are we seeing those expenditures in the general fund with a transfer to cover those or not?
We do have a transfer from water and wastewater to the general fund for our utility transfer, and we'll talk about that more at the utility meeting. But for those positions that are split, like a third from the general fund and another 2/3 from the water and wastewater fund, they're primarily paid from the general fund, and then we'll transfer money from water and wastewater to cover that.
Can I ask a quick aside?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when we're planning out street projects, we're a bit for time wise when they start, we're kind of at a bit of a mercy of the contractor. Is that correct?
A little bit.
Okay.
Obviously, asphalt is only produced about 6 months out of the year, so there's some of that. We also have to make sure that our detour routes don't have detour routes that don't have detour routes.
Right.
So we try to keep at least a few arterials open. We also try to schedule around big events at K-State. We try to not be on campus, you know, from September to March, because that's a really busy time.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into it. It's three-dimensional chess is what it is, because you're
Yeah.
looking at the whole board and trying to figure out what's open and what's closed.
Yeah. Seems like a lot this month, but
Yeah, well, some of
glad
that
it's
is-
getting done.
Yeah. Really, the only thing we let the contractor, the only way the contractor becomes involved is we have a time limit on when they need to be done. And if they go past that, then we obviously enforce liquidated damages where we take dollars away from them.
Okay.
Karen, did you have something?
Yeah, I thank you, Jamie, for asking that question. I get a little fuzzy with the other funds that come in, you know, to see the big picture.
Sure.
Because we have special street and highway.
Correct.
We have state funds, right?
Well, that's Special Street and Highway,
Yeah,
correct?
I mean, yeah. And then we have the sales tax that,
Correct.
you know, so how do you decide what are they paying for?
So Special Street and Highway can be used for just about anything. We pay, a lot of our equipment comes out of that. A lot of our trucks, equipment comes out of that. I believe we have one employee half-time paid out of that. A lot of our salt comes out of that. A lot of our concrete repairs come out of that. That's only generating about $1.6 million a year, so it doesn't go very far. We typically try to peel off about $1 million a year for street funds or street repairs. If you remember back in April from the street maintenance, there's about $1 million out of Special Street and Highway, there's about $1 million out of general fund, and then there's about $2.5 million that comes out of street sales tax. And that equals our $4 million a year, which in 2016 was the dollar amount that we needed to spend to stay even. We're not staying even because inflation is eating our lunch. We probably need to be closer to $6 million.
Thank you.
Yep,
Anyone else?
thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Commissioners, Mayor, Dan Tyson, Street Fleet Stormwater Superintendent. As my very descriptive job title says, I'm in charge of 3 different divisions in Public Works: street maintenance, stormwater maintenance, and our fleet division. Oops, sorry. I'm new at this, so bear with me. You guys have seen a lot of this already before. I know a lot of Rob's presentations, all the stuff we're involved with repairing around the city, 550 lane miles of road. I want to get more down to what the impact is of these budget cuts, personnel cuts, staffing cuts. We have 11 full-time employees that are responsible for street maintenance. That's 550 miles. That's a pretty tall task. We only have 3 employees that are responsible for utility cuts. We have 4 employees that are responsible for all of our stormwater maintenance. That includes all the water intakes from rain runoff, all the open ditches, all of that. And then we have 3 street sweepers that are full-time. That's a total of 21 personnel that we have right now. That's where we're staffed at. This is a large impact when it comes to maintaining the streets, but the larger impact's getting ready to come when it comes to snow and ice. Our minimum level that we have determined is 8 trucks per crew, and right now we're only or 9 trucks per crew. Right now we're only going to be able to staff 8, and by the end of the year it looks like we'll only be able to staff 6 from some information I've had. We've determined that it's roughly about 5 hours per route in a truck when we're treating only, and about 8 to 10 hours when we're plowing. So if you can do the math, that's going to add a lot of time to our clearing streets from snow and ice. That's going to add up in overtime, all of that. Our fleet maintenance, we have over 400 pieces of our vehicles and equipment, and we have 2 mechanics, 1 crew leader, and 1 welder that takes care of all of that. I guess I don't have much else, so if you have any questions.
But that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like Dan said,
I would just say, the same question I asked the Chief French about overtime. It would be interesting to know, kind of what we're paying in overtime versus what it would cost to have those additional personnel or or anything like that. So if you could, back in the napkin kind of stuff, I would be interested to see that.
Sure.
Thanks.
and I think that's important. It's, during the snow crews, our guys are out there, and obviously, it's 12-hour shifts. So, we have to have people ready to go day and night, and then a lot of times, snow doesn't break on the weekend or a holiday. So sometimes you'll actually see them out there on Christmas or New Year's or one of the holidays like that. So we got some great people down there, great employees. This is my last commission meeting up here, and I got to tell you, the people that I work with in Public Works, fantastic. You got some great people here, so please take care of them. So talk a little bit about 2024. We talked about the projects, the street maintenance, maintaining the arterials, the collectors. And then, over a period of time, if it quits snowing, then we'll start getting to the residential areas. So it's important that we get those main thoroughfares clear so we can get the traffic moving. Obviously, we have some positions open. What that is so you got one position open in traffic right now that we're keeping open, and 4 in the street maintenance. That's a whole crew that could be out there working on the roads, but we're trying to maintain, get by this year to where we can make this happen and stuff. So we've been pretty fortunate in how we planned stuff, except for the asphalt plant shutting down, and breaking down last week, which Fort Riley and then some of the other projects that are around, and that's kind of what happened out there. For 2025, operational funds for the general fund, we can't keep using the special street and highway. We're going to have to figure out how to budget this going forward. And we have the same issues. There's a lot of unfunded needs out there. I'm sure that you drive down the street and you see the same things that we do. But I do want to say one thing, and I've talked about our people in Public Works, or professionalism and how they do things. They want to keep the level of service up. And we talked about this at the commission retreat, is that resources is what drives where that level of service is. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lyndon, I just want to say thank you on behalf of the entire commission for your service this year.
It's been fun. It's been a great time.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Aaron Stewart, Parks and Rec Director. And I can say my presentation will be slightly different than what you've heard tonight, because we're going to talk a lot about cost recovery. I know you've heard that come out of me quite a bit this year, but we're actually going to apply that into our budget process for next year. So just looking at kind of where we're headed, again, our goal is to try to reduce that subsidy, and you can see the 2024 revised budget, which will be closer to those actuals. Just full transparency, that 10,521,000 will probably be a little higher. Part of what we did is, again, reduce personnel to try to make that number, and we're doing that through attrition, so that didn't quite come down as fast as we thought it would. But we are on target for that 2025 number of 10.8. Now, some of that is increases in expenses, but it's also increases in revenues with the idea that we're getting that higher cost recovery at 27%. So what is cost recovery and what is our objective with that? Again, our goal is to balance equity with the financial constraints. So we want to make sure that even though we're going to move to a more entrepreneurial approach, that we provide an avenue that people that need the financial assistance can achieve it and participate, and even at a higher level. Again, provide universal access to parks and recreation. I've said this before, try to achieve the 35 to 40% cost recovery status, which is considered best in industry, which will enhance our financial sustainability and align our resources with community priorities. So kind of the methodology, and right now we've got a program cost recovery, and we will move that from a 5-tier approach to a 3-tier approach. Essential is community-based programs that have high value community-wide, and on up the list to the value added. And the value added, the higher you climb on the list, the more individual benefited the program is. And it could exceed 100% cost recovery. So there should be some programs, in particular one I can think of is any adult sports, that should be recovering excess of 100%. We want to complete a cost of service analysis. So make sure we're accounting for all direct and indirect costs. And with an operational cost recovery, we're not necessarily including the parks budget or administration and those costs worked back into that fee structure. So to me, it's really important that if we're going to have a transparent conversation of what it costs to run youth flag football, we should be able to account for everything, including what it costs to paint the field, what it costs to implement and maintain the turf. And with the new ERP system, hopefully we'll be able to do that with a much more higher degree of accuracy. And then, of course, what will the market bear, right? And that's where it falls into the next one with that entrepreneurial approach. Some programs may fall into that, say, middle level, the important of the 35 to 75% cost recovery, but the market would bear a higher income. We should take that approach. We should use that to recover a higher fee, reduce the subsidy through recovering higher fees, because the market will support that. And again, of course, cost reductions. It's not just a one-tiered approach where we're increasing fees. We want to take cost reductions. You're going to see here in the next month that, as I've been promising all along, there are auto mowers coming our way for you guys to make a decision on that we would like to implement at Annenberg. Now, again, we're not necessarily reducing staff to do that above and beyond what we would have done anyways, but it will allow us to be more productive at a lower cost. So, as I said, what's really important is this commitment to equity, so this universal access. And a lot of things that come up is the financial barriers. And we're fortunate with the Manhattan Parks and Rec Foundation that's willing to financially support those scholarship funds, because right now we are just eating them. The city's just absorbing that cost. So the foundation will provide a scholarship fund that would reimburse us and make us whole for the program. So we wouldn't actually see that deduction anymore. It'd be a tiered approach based on need, and we would put that policy in front of you. And the implementation approach would be balancing that cost recovery with affordability and targeting programs that serve underrepresented and underserved populations. So here's some of the changes just to highlight. Removing household limits. You may remember right now there's a $150 limit on each household. So if you have multiple children, at the end of the day, you're probably making decisions of what you're participating in and what you're not. expand the eligible program. So the only thing that we're excluding potentially in that program would be things like adult sports that would be team-oriented team sports. And then when we provide outside venues, and the foundation event I would use would be the July 4th event. Or something that Friends of Lee Richardson Zoo, Brew at the Zoo. That's their event. We're hosting it as part of a partner there. Those would be excluded.
You said team sports, but you meant adult team sports, right?
Adult team sports.
Okay.
Yes. So,
Sorry, Aaron, so adult participants would not be eligible for scholarships?
no, just team sport oriented. A lot of times that they get sponsorships that will fund their team. It's a team price, so we're not doing an individual registration on that. So it's the collective pricing strategy. So, and again, highly individual benefited. There are plenty of other things that, and we can kind of cover this at the end, that if we were to charge for, that adults would, if they qualified under the benefits, would be eligible to qualify for scholarships. So had a foundation meeting tonight, so we'll need to change this a little bit. They would like to see this restricted to anybody with a Manhattan address. So that would be beyond city limits, but a Manhattan address or USD 383 in the district. So that's kind of what they would be willing to fund. And so we would mirror that policy since they're funding it under that way.
So that would exclude like Ogden.
Not under the USD 383.
Okay. So either they have a Manhattan address.
Either or.
Or, okay.
Yep.
Got it.
And Ogden and Keats were very much front of mind with that discussion. Because again, they do participate in our programs and obviously support us. So there is a newer tiered level where you could qualify for additional assistance beyond what we've talked about with this 150, and we would pair that up with a free and reduced lunch timeline, which would be, it would expire every July and you would need to renew. So if you're on the free and reduced lunch program, automatically off the top, that's all you got to show, or a benefits letter if we're talking about adults. 50% off the program fee or membership fee, whatever that may be, whatever the eligible program is. There'll be an application that they could apply for additional assistance, and based on where they fall into that, the federal poverty guidelines, we would apply that scholarship amount to it. So it could be free, so if they're far enough down on that list. And again, the ineligible programs, adult team registrations, stuff that we host, but we're not operating. Facility rentals, items for resale or permitting. So in other words, we're not going to scholarship concession items.
So if we have, like, say, we've got a lot of soccer teams that are organized by a third party, but they're at Annenberg, those would not qualify for this, right?
We facilitate for their programs. That's not actually our programs. These would be our own programs.
Okay.
Aaron, do you have an estimation of how much does the foundation have an estimation of how much?
So 2019 was our largest year with 17,000. Now, $17,000 in scholarship funds. Again, so those are limited funds based on the $150 cap. It's decreased ever since then. I think there's a couple things that attribute to that. I don't know that we promote it very well, but also you see the removal of the cap could increase that based on, and adding these levels based on the amount that we would then subsidize through a scholarship fund. So I do anticipate that to grow, and if it's a growing problem, that's a good thing, with recognizing that 20% of our population lives under the poverty level. So I would hope that we would get that to grow. I think the anticipated goal from the foundation is to have a $100,000 scholarship rolling fund, meaning they're maintaining that balance year over year. But again, that's kind of where we're sitting today.
Okay, and they're comfortable with that. I would just hate to get us in a situation where we're either having to stop
We won't stop the program.
then we're
We would
going to
have
be covering those costs.
I would
through
bring
the
back
city
a conversation with the commission to continue to provide that program.
years away.
Yeah.
Are we to the point yet where we've talked about procedures for applying for these scholarships?
I have examples from my past about how to go about that. We're not there yet. I would say we would adopt that policy and work out the application period.
Okay. And just, sometimes it costs more money to administer means-tested programs than they actually save, so.
Yeah, it's the simple solution here is they fill out an application, they provide proof of income of some sort, and we want to make that as easy as possible.
Sure.
And we'll work with some partners to figure out how to make that as easy as possible. There's literally a link in the document that takes you to the website that you can jump on the spreadsheet to determine where they fall, and it's right in there. It's not even subjective. It's literally where do they fall in that spreadsheet, and we would apply that for the year.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Again, so our implementation strategy as we talk about the cost recovery program is we need to review and reclassify all of our programs and services. We need to conduct the cost of service analysis and explore the entrepreneurial approaches and implement the cost-saving measures. So we want to evaluate this because, again, none of us, and you can see from what I submitted in the budget, we're not trying to jump to 35% a year. That's unreasonable. And even the 27 is probably a big jump. But we want to grow into that, so we would review that every year. And we may find out as we're doing this that we get to 32% and that's what we can tolerate. And if that's the case, that's okay. But we want to shoot for that 35 to 40%. We'll review that annually. We can provide that information to the commission as kind of our target mark to get our subsidy down. Questions?
Aaron, is there still a plan for sponsorships?
Yes.
I think there's some policies we have to look at to.
Well, I got an opportunity to review that with Katie, and after review, I think we're actually okay. We just need to start putting packages together.
Okay.
There is one in draft form for the SECO project right now. That's where we're going to start, and we'll expand off after that.
So both big and small.
Yeah, it'll be,
sponsorships.
and we're doing things like team sponsorships now, but the opportunities we've mentioned many times of dotting our outfield fences with advertisements, that's coming. We've had some more recent discussions and with the SECO project and trying to nail down some of those issues that'll be a good template to start with that we can then quickly expand to the rest.
Are those included as cost recovery methods? Like, is that where that's?
So that's where it depends.
I don't know.
Yes. It would depend on whether we're doing them internally or if the foundation is actually using some of those items to be part of the fundraiser. And so part of this development is we got to figure out where that line is. I think with things like the SECO project, these major capital projects, that would be an internal piece in order to make that dollar go a little farther in that project. Okay. So this is not completely inclusive, but part of I want to highlight some of the big changes, and one of the big changes is concessions operations, bringing that back in-house in 2025. We anticipate a loss on that in year one for the investment in equipment to the tune of about $85,000. But after that, we would anticipate a return of a profit year over year. And ideally higher than what we're going to show in that 7.5 years. An example of what we put in there is pool admissions. This is moving it to a straight $6 fee. And that alone would capture about $80,000 in additional revenue. Memberships at the rec centers, including drop-in fees, would yield, between the two of them, would yield about another $120,000 a year. And we did account for the fact that there would be less usage by charging. So we took that at about a 90% use rate. Day camp expansion, we actually saw that, and when you look at the projected numbers of why our revenue's up, we've actually experienced this this year. We filled that to 180 people and 180 in the first session, 175 in session 2. So that was a significant increase that we experienced this year, and we plan to continue to expand that into next year. And then just various program fee adjustments. So.
The day camp expansion, is that net of increased staffing that's required in order to?
Yeah, and so we generally looking at a 15-to-1. So we're bringing on, for every 15 kids, we're bringing on at 750 per session. We have that one staff member cost. So it far exceeds that, the rate of return on that far exceeds that. Now, obviously, that's not the only thing we pay for. We go on several trips and destinations. So we have busing. They went to the Salinas Water Park, was the last week's field trip. So there are other costs out there that associate with that. So it's not exactly a one-for-one return, but we're recovering that.
Are we getting close to capacity for that facility?
No. We thought we were. We tried to take it to capacity, and even though we had 180 registered and 175 in session 2, our average weekly attendance was only 130. So we were actually 55 under capacity on any given day.
Cool.
But that's a slippery slope. You don't want to try to overbook.
Right.
When I was looking through all those numbers that you gave us, the ice rink didn't have, it had a 0. What was that all about?
The ice rink in the aquatics budget?
It was, I think so.
Sorry, I'm trying to find it. I mean, it would not have a 0. We're going to take in revenue, so I'll have to look into why that is. We'll take in revenue just like we have. Yeah.
No, I think this was in the budget over taken care of.
There's, 7,500 in expense, and then,
I got 45,000
For the ice
for
rink?
24 and 25 budget for revenue.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It was 0 for 22 and
Yeah.
23.
Yeah, I wondered why, that's what I wondered.
Yeah.
Because it was open in 23.
So we shifted that under the aquatics budget, and I don't have the revenues in front of me, but we collected revenues on it.
Okay.
And will. All right.
How's staff morale?
So we've reduced 2 full-time staff members in rec and 6 full-time staff members in parks. We've kind of left Discovery Center and the zoo where they're at, because they're a very tight operation to begin with. We plan on keeping it there, so we went for parks, for example, we went from 45 to 37 FTEs is what we're shooting for, 37, 38. So I think it's a little bit of what you've heard tonight. It's mixed. For us, we're hoping that this is kind of where the bottom line is, and again, my goal is to set fees administratively under these cost recovery policies, and I think if we do that, we're going to be able to kind of manage that effectively. So I think other options we would have to see.
Okay. Thanks.
We'll go through the city manager's office pretty quick. We have 30 people working in the manager's office between admin, clerk's office, communications, building services, IT, and parking services. You can see the asterisk at the bottom. IT and parking services are not through the general fund. There's transfers that come through in special revenue funds. They are managed by our office. Our actuals, 23, just under 1.9 million. 2024 projections, we're looking at just over 2.1 million with a slight increase next year for 2.28 million. This kind of rounds out the departmental impacts in the general fund, provides you a summary. We're looking at about $2.9 million increase over our projected expenses in '24 for the '25 budget. General services is it's a pretty broad budgeted fund. We cover a lot of different pieces and parts here. Some of the general fund outside agencies are funded here, as well as the joint maintenance facility. There's a piece of it that is funded out of general services, a lot of contractual services. The asterisk that I give you is there's a plug number in that fund that's typically reflects balancing our budget. So we have to submit a balanced budget to the state of Kansas. Our revenues have to meet our expenditures. So when we show cash balances, we have to show corresponding expenditures so they balance. The idea of the $45 million in the 2025 budget projected right now, 2024 budget was actually roughly $3 million. So we're basically flat in the general fund when it comes to a budgeted number. The biggest difference really is where you're starting with your cash and where you're ending with it. And that's the topic we'll hop into here in a second. Property and liability insurance. Tammy alluded to this. It's gone up significantly. She manages this side of the house for us. Street lighting has gone up. Gas and electricity have gone up. Professional services and other expenses. We spent quite a bit of money recruiting this year and paying SGR for their services. It's more than just the recent recruitment. It's several this year. So those expenses are all caught within the general services budget itself. From a revenue standpoint, I'll just remind you of just where we're comprised of our revenue, our major revenue sources. Some of the data on the right is pretty significant in terms of last year and the year before. We had received a lot of our revenue, and this year it's slow to come in. It's concerning just where we're going to end the year from a revenue perspective, and it's our reality. Property taxes aren't really necessarily the issue, but when you're talking about $45 million and a lot of it's coming from sales tax, franchise fees, and other revenues fees, it's all subject to really what our population and our community are doing. Their visits to Target and Home Depot and Walmart are critical. And I just popped in an article between 5 and 6 from Home Depot nationwide suggesting people are not spending money like they were a few years ago. And Home Depot is a pretty good indicator of where people will go to spend their money within their homes to make improvements. It's an interesting take in terms of just looking at the economy, but we're seeing a slowdown and a downturn really in our sales tax revenues with the city. So there's a couple other documents within your packet. These documents start to get into a forecast for the general fund. We've highlighted a beginning cash balance this year of $11 million. We've forecasted our revenues of around 32.5. Our forecasted expenditures are just over $38.6 million. Without injecting ARPA or even talking about the one-time transient guest tax injection, our cash balance, which was $16 million in 2023, would reside just under $5 million at the end of the year. If you choose to move the 4 and the 1.5, it'll bolster it back to the 10.4 beginning cash balance in 2025. These are forecasted. This is us taking a snap today and trying to give you an idea through the end of the year and next year where revenues and expenditures will be. We're not increasing our revenue projections for next year. They're staying flat. There will be amongst you a desire to increase those, and I would caution you in doing so. The additional revenue from the 5 mills we'll break down here in a minute. 3 of those are existing. They're in the bond and interest. There's a bond and interest forecast in your packet as well, showing you where our balances are. Those balances are healthy right now, but they will drop as more debt comes on. Forecasted revenues in totality with that 10 million, with the 3.7 million in the mill levy projections for the property tax, you're looking at about 46.8 million. Total revenues for next year with 39.8 in expenditures, which is a culmination of all those departmental presentations you just received. So 6.9, roughly 7 million ending cash balance in 2026. We had talked previously about adopting policies and having $10 million as a cash balance at a minimum. That is going to be difficult to maintain moving forward. The options you all have at this moment deal with forecasted expenditures and looking to departments to reduce their expenses. Increasing revenues, the capacity you have under the mill levy beyond these 5 mills is another 0.8 mills based on the revenue neutral rate that was adopted in the 4 mill increase that you established that evening.
Which is like 600,000?
Yeah.
600?
About 600K.
Can we clarify the additional 5 mills? That's the line here that says additional revenue from 5 mills. That's moving. Have we gotten to breaking that down yet, or
3 from
that's 3 from bond and interest, and then 2 from additional mill levy increase?
Yeah, let me make this a little bigger.
I just want to make sure that's clear for everybody.
Yeah, in a mill right now, roughly worth the $723,000. We'll walk through where 2024, the mill levies were in 2024. We were 48.929. We're talking about mill levies going to 52.172. The changes in the mill levies are out here to the side. So for the police department and the library, based on what was submitted or what was approved, there's a 1.236 mill levy increase for next year. When we talk about moving mills out of the bond and interest fund, in 2024, there were 3.663 mills funding a portion of the bond and interest fund. In this scenario, it takes 3 mills away from the bond and interest fund, leaves it with 0.661, moves those up to the general fund. So the general fund would go from, just in that move, from 6.080 to 9.082. We've talked about 2 mill increase in the general fund as well. So the 3 mills that would move out of bond and interest and the 2 mill increase would create 11 mills in the general fund, bolstering those revenues by that 3.7, almost $3.8 million, transitioning from 4.2 to 8 million in the general fund. That nets you out at 3.243 mills over where you were in 2024.
I just want to point out too that Riley County is lowering theirs by 1.9. So from a personal property tax, it's being lowered by 1.9.
Yeah.
Just wanted to throw that out there for more of discussion, because I know we think about how these are going to impact individuals and homeowners.
There's 150 mills currently within the city limits of Manhattan in Riley County. Roughly 60 of those go to the school district, 50 roughly go to the city, and the remaining to the county of around high 30s. Yeah, and I can pull something up. I have it in another folder if we want to look at those. But yeah, 150 mills, 2 come off for the school, for the county, roughly 1.9, 3.2 come back on. You're looking at a 1.3 mill increase if the school district stayed the same.
Jason, where is the revenue from interest in this whole picture?
I'm not sure exactly what fund we represented in. It's sent out in our cash on a monthly. Recently Rebecca put.
I understand it's 1.3 million.
So the revenue for our interest income, it gets deposited into a pooled cash fund and then distributed out to the funds that are eligible to have interest distributed to them on a monthly basis.
But
So-
you told me when I asked how much was in the interest fund, 1.3 million.
But it's been distributed as of June. Like, every month is distributed. So that's essentially, if you look at the report from June, the amount that's in the general fund that we have receipted in, excuse me,
Well, I did find interest someplace. It said it was
520,000 as of June.
400,000. It gone down from 500,000.
As of June, we have receipted in 520,000, and our budgeted amount is 500,000 for the general fund.
Oh, no, this wasn't the bond and interest fund. It
The
was-
bond and interest fund does not get interest distributed to it.
So is the bond and interest fund basically supported, you know, we have specials and then those go to the state and then they come back to us and they go into the bond and interest fund? Is that, I mean,
So the
So-
bond, go ahead, Rena.
So, our debt service for all of our general obligation bonds is paid out of the bond and interest fund, including our special assessment related debt. And then each August, we certify to the county, we receive our distributions with our property taxes, in January and then June of each year. And the special assessments go into the bond and interest fund, so that,
so we get the, the county treasurer gets the property tax dollars and sends it to the state and then we get it back in January, the whole amount, or does it come month by month, or?
Which revenue stream are you talking about, Commissioner?
they are distributed mainly in June, January and June. We do have some that come in March, a little bit in, September and October as well. Those are how the county distributes the property taxes and/or special assessments. And then the portion of the county tax.
And
that
then we
get
also
from
get
them.
the specials in January and June?
Yes, ma'am.
So, we have a huge amount of money coming in, and we invest most of it, right? Until we don't have to pay for it immediately. I mean,
I'm not tracking your question.
well, I'm just saying,
This document gives you a better feel for year over year per revenue stream, what is coming into the bond and interest fund.
but the interest that we get, we do have interest profits.
We do. In any given year, it's between 400,000, 500,000. We're back out for CDs that are 6, 9, 12-month CDs. When that money comes back, as Rena described, it's distributed from the funds that are eligible to receive those interest payments back into the original or,
So where do we see that?
Doesn't go into the bond and
500,000?
it's in the general fund. So this is the bond and interest fund. The bond and interest fund
Yeah, I
that's-
noticed, yeah.
does not have any investment income coming in there. So it will be 362 is the number range, Jason, if you scroll down on those pages. Yep, in that area.
so the investment interest is varied anywhere from 401,000 in '22. We did have 897 in '23. We budgeted $500,000 in
Of course, in 22, the interest rate was like 0.0, and now it's, you know, even 9-month CDs, you can get 4.5.
Yeah,
I know you have to be very careful with dollars. But-
We as an entity of the city don't have the same luxury of investing like a private individual. We are limited on what money can go out for investment. We're also limited on the rates at which we can earn that interest. That's all.
I noticed that Pot County had almost 3 million in interest income, and Riley County, I think it was 1.9.
They have a lot of
Are
idle
we
cash.
not utilizing our funds quickly enough, or, I mean, getting them into a 3-month CD would, I mean, if we're getting all those property taxes back, that's a lot of millions of dollars.
But ma'am, the property taxes are used to pay the debt. So we have debt payments that are due in May and also October. So that's, I mean, if we did invest, it would only be for about a 6-month period.
Well,
We do
6 months if you have umpteen million, I mean,
There's only so much idle cash we have sitting around. If you want to compare idle cash to Riley County and Pot County, I'm pretty confident theirs is more than ours.
Well, just a thought.
Yep.
The other thing that I'm really confused about and is the transfer to IT from every department. If you transfer that to the IT department, I didn't see the IT costs. It seems like that's
That's in an internal service fund, which is another packet of information that we will eventually share with you all. So that's not a part of the general fund, similar to the bond and interest fund and all the special revenue funds and the enterprise funds. So that's another packet of information to provide.
there was some really bizarre ones, like concessions made 12 million and the IT fund charged them 10 million. It just seems like I'd like to know just exactly what does IT cost, and Commissioner Matta and that commission agreed to put the COVID money in there for that. I mean, it just seems to me there's, when I added up the, just the Park and Rec IT contribution from 17,000 from Anthony and 24,000 from admin and 18,000 from athletics and 100,000 from the Discovery Center, I got 670,000. That's just one department, and it just seems like this money's kind of moving around.
Yeah, they essentially have a lot of people using a lot of devices with a lot of software. And instead of creating all these expenses within IT, we go back into each department and they essentially pay for their people to use those services. So they carve out money out of their budget, send it to IT so they can have all those software devices and access to that information on their computers.
So are the computers and the equipment?
We used to have all the IT charges right there in the department itself. Now it's all in the IT department, so we take money away from every department to fund the IT department so they can manage all that software, all those devices. It's all centralized.
Is that a set percentage across all departments, or is it vary?
It gets by people and by what you're using.
People, what you're using.
Well, I just didn't know if there was the percentage. Keep going, Rena.
Yes, so originally IT used to be in the finance department, then they moved to the city manager's office. And then this is an attempt to centralize them. In addition, a lot of the IT-related expenses were coded to the respective departments, but we also coded a lot of software to general services, which is that catch-all department that Jason alluded to earlier. It's hard to manage all of that for the entire organization when it's just over here we're helping Parks and Recreation, and then Fire Department has their needs, and so on and so forth. So that was the attempt to try to centralize that, to shore up IT as a separate department division with a strategic plan and staffing and things of that nature. And so we all are paying for a portion of their costs. If not, it would be in the general fund. All of that stuff would be in the general fund. Also, the utility funds would be partaking in that as well.
I think it would be clearer to everybody and not inflate the budget if we just had IT do their work. I mean, the Discovery Center, $100,000. What did they do there that,
They have all types of software.
I know they have all kinds
They
of
have
software, but they've
devices.
had all kinds of software. I mean, this is next year for, whatever they're gonna do. Are they gonna need $100,000 next
Oh, yeah,
year?
absolutely.
Well, they have, most of those,
All that software renews.
yeah, but many of the things that they have were purchased by the Discovery Center Foundation.
Even
And
access
and
to
the
your
maintenance.
mail and even access to the cloud costs money per user every year.
And Commissioner McCullough, the information that you're referencing, they have separate budget for that in terms of their exhibits and things of that nature. And there are foundation-related sponsorship and donations for larger exhibit and projection type needs. So those are different pots of money compared to what you're referencing for the IT service.
And I know IT is expensive, but I do think community development, like paying $63,000, I mean, that's a huge amount of their budget. I just, I feel like we're, I don't want to say padding, but we're kind of putting these things here and we're not showing them up over here.
That's
Does that make
exactly
sense?
what was happening before, and now we're more efficient and actually have control over these expenses. They have to budget for them. They can't simply go, I want a piece of software, charge it out of the general services, which is what was happening before. Now, if you have a user and they've got a device and they've got multiple software packages, they're expensive. And that's essentially what they're paying for. We are not shoving this into a fund where it's just all combined and it's a big number. Each department is paying. It's like having a vehicle.
Yeah.
It's like taking it to fleet to get it serviced.
Yeah, but we don't put
We
the
don't-
CIP in everybody's budget. We don't put the trucks, I mean, the fire department has $500,000 in IT. And I'm just saying that to get a
maintain the
true
GI.
picture of what things cost, I'm not seeing this.
You're getting a true picture of what it costs that department to leverage that resource. And if you collectively put it under one, you won't know.
So it costs $10,000 to do the $12,000 concession line?
I'm not sure I'm tracking you. Aaron, are you tracking her?
That was one line in your budget.
For concessions?
You had several concessions.
Well, some of what's going to come out of ours is also an allocation towards Civic Rec, which is part of what pays for our registration program. I mean, yes, we're going to have employees that have cell phones, we're going to have phones, we're going to have computers, you're going to have
Software.
Point of sale.
point of sale, thank you. Well, the readers,
Or the card
all the
readers.
equipment that goes along with that. Plus, you're going to have internet services to those locations. So it tends to add up very quickly.
Yeah, no, I realize that, but I don't think a concession stand uses $10,000 worth of electronics. It's in there somewhere.
What's more than one?
Yeah, and there are other concessions that pay too, but I just mean, it seems to me this doesn't, I would rather see, maybe you need to put it in IT with tabs that say, community development only gets 63,000 or something like that. But I just don't feel like we're seeing a clear picture of what each department needs.
So,
Karen, are you saying that just because it's not itemized? Is that what you're talking about when you're saying not seeing a clear picture? Not seeing it
Well,
itemized,
it's-
broken down after the IT charges that you're not?
I mean, I feel like departments are getting just charged sort of per capita or something, not,
I mean, I think within it, they've set a specific budget, so community development can only use 63, I don't know if that number's right,
but
63,000
does
or.
Douglas Center need 28,000? I mean, I
It
don't
gets
know.
back to the department head managing the division with what they want them to access or not access. Those department heads and those division heads have absolute control over the IT charge. They could eliminate all their people and all their devices and all their computers and have zero, but that's not going to be very productive.
No.
I mean, it's pretty standard to do it that way. It's responsibility accounting, so you put it under the department head. But usually, like I'm used to accounting systems, you can do responsibility or comparative. So you can just take all IT expenses, all, material handling or all maintenance expenses. So you can compare those if you're doing comparative analysis, or you can look at it from responsibility,
Yep.
which is by the department
And we can run
head.
those
And I would
reports for
think
you.
your,
Yep.
probably accounting system, you can divide it up those two ways. So you can say IT and totals up this.
Yep.
And then in here, it's just a
Absolutely.
responsibility. I do have a question on the transient guest tax.
Oh, good, that's where I was gonna go too, John.
It's because you have the 1.5 million for 2024. Could you kind of explain that a little bit? Is that funds we have in transient guest tax from buildup and what's not being distributed in that year that we're pulling in?
So in 2023, we had 3 million in revenue. We forecasted about 2.6, 2.7 million this year. This 1.5 million is a cash balance. It has been accumulated over time. It is not part of the 3 million last year or 2.6 this year that's been allocated and spent. It is the unspent fund balance within transient guest tax. A big part of this happened post-COVID. And when COVID took place, our transient guest tax revenues plummeted, and we were very slow to bring them back. So our budgets were basically underdeveloped, and they overperformed. So in those years, we were accumulating cash. The next year, the fund balance grew. The revenues also grew. It happened 22, 23. 24, we've seen an actual leveling out, if not a plateau, a little bit of a dip. But we have accumulated 1.5 million as a cash balance, but it still leave, I think it's 1.7. Don't we leave about 300,000 in there, Rena?
It's
250.
Yeah.
250, okay. So the 1.5 is available. 1.5, and I sent you a memo earlier today. I hope you all were able to read it. But it does give you some guidance in terms of what past commissions have done and chartered out from underneath state law. So you do have discretion over those funds. But when we look at parking services and we look at parks and their involvement in what they do in Aggieville and downtown, there's a pretty substantial amount of money each year invested in those two districts.
Which
by the city.
leads me to the next question is, in this budget, how much is going into outside agencies, or how much just to use transient guest tax? I know the chamber want an extra couple $100,000 to stay at their 60%. What does this budget assume? Because one of my strategies is to use alternate revenue sources as much as we can, like you did at this one time. Do we have any opportunity? Have you already built that in? What's the?
The special revenue funds will come to you next week. My understanding on the general fund, we have built the budget based on the requests. So the requests that came in, really there's a budget for outside agencies of about $500,000, which you all kind of kicked around. You didn't make a total decision on, but that $500,000's in the general fund as the outside agencies. The transient guest tax fund, I mean, we provided it that night.
Yeah.
It's there as requested. There's 2.7 million. It could fund all those requests, but if you wanted to use that for another purpose in the general fund, we would need to move additional money.
I'm not going to be popular with this, but I don't think we can increase any outside agency given our budget situation. We have to figure out how to use it to offset our costs. I'd say that across the board.
Yeah. So the TGT funds, moving that over is something, I mean, I've told you this, Jason, I'm not a fan of moving that one over. I think it gets lost in the mix is maybe how I think about it. And we keep just trying to plug this hole. Really, I mean, yes, we have an expense problem. We're out spending our revenues, but we have a revenue problem and our revenues aren't hitting there. I think when we just use this, use this money to plug a hole, I don't like that. And also, if it's money that's going to sit there to keep that general fund cash balance higher, can't we just leave it in TGT and we know it's there? I mean, I guess I don't see the advantage. I just think it gets lost. That's a very simple statement, and that's not meant to be a critique. I think some of those things that we're talking about wanting to pay for, we can leave it in TGT and still pay for it when those things come up, or, we talked about parking services, those sort of things. Doing that out of TGT without going ahead and just moving it all over.
I just shift our conversation back to the one we had a month or so ago. Rating agencies look at a couple funds, bond and interest, general fund. They don't look at the transient guest tax fund and see what the balance is. This is the one they pay attention to because they know it's the fund that is supporting all the departments and activities and services in this room. Transient guest tax fund to them really doesn't make a difference.
I mean, I understand. I just think it's quick to move it over. That may not be the right way to say that.
Yeah,
I guess I just want it to be purposeful. Not that it's not like a very specific plan for it. I'm using the wrong words on this. I want to.
It's all kind of goes together. Even Commissioner McCullough's comment about, what's a COLA and what's the step. You can increase the COLA in the step. You'll increase your expenditures, you'll drop your cash balance. And if there's a comfort level with the 5 of you to go do that, that's fine. I feel like we need to stop our expenses. I don't know how, I mean, I'm looking at revenue, they're not coming in. Revenue is not coming in. It's a big reason in January why I approached the commission with a sales tax question, because I knew this conversation about property taxes was going to be difficult. I knew our revenues were going to struggle this year. You can look at the state's forecast for next year. It's negative from a sales tax perspective. These are people that do this a lot more often and more deep than we do. But they're looking at this state and they're predicting a negative 2.5% to 3% in sales tax. That is our livelihood. It's why I came with the sales tax question, because we need revenue or we reduce expenses. Those are our two options. And moving money out of a fund that has a balance right now that's really not being asked for and it's not being used, put it in here, keep your cash balance where you need to so your rating agencies aren't nervous when they come and they grade your debt. That's the strategy.
So where's the COVID money we're using for the IT?
One-time ARPA injection. Oh, for IT, we decided a few months ago, Commissioner McCullough, not to fund the ERP system with ARPA, but to use it to help with the cash balance in the general fund. If you'd like to change that direction, we can go whatever direction you'd like. It just takes $4 million out of this equation, and your cash balance at the end of next year is $2.9 million. And that debt's not going to be issued for 3 years.
Peter, I couldn't tell, are you on or off?
I'm on. I'm just trying to think of what I want to say. Okay, so we've got a short-term solution, but a long-term problem.
I wouldn't say it's a short-term solution.
Short-term
it's a
patch for a long-term problem.
It's,
And I,
Yeah.
I think this request for this forecast has really helped a lot. I mean, but we're going to talk about the assumptions in the 4 million, the one-time cash. We're going to talk about mill levies increasing. And we're going to talk about trying to hold the line in terms of expenditures. But when we look at 23 actuals, 24 projected, and 25 projected, I can tell you holding us at $38 and $39 million is going to stress your services. Everything is costing more. Everything. And holding our people's pay is one strategy to try to let those revenues catch up over time. But this analysis, I love it. I think it's the best way to show people
it is. It
our
just
experience.
was different a month. It was different
Yeah,
a month ago.
it was different a month ago.
And the assumptions were different.
They were better.
They
They were better.
They were a lot better. We were going to move one-time ARPA. There was going to be a $4 million reduction, or a $1 million reduction, which left us at, I think, $38,068,000. And then it was get $2 million in property and we'll reduce $2 million in expenditures. We got theoretically $3.7 million and aren't
property.
seeing in property
Yep.
taxes and aren't seeing the $2 million in reduction. I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just saying like that. I mean, that's the frustrating part is that this is an awesome tool, but it changes every month.
We can show the $2 million
I mean, it changed from
reduction.
last month to this month, but
I didn't get a lot of feedback that night that we wanted to do $2 million worth of reductions because it's people
for this year.
for 25. We can go back through that. I just didn't get a lot of positive reaction from the governing body.
I think it's fair, our reaction was, we want to retain our staff. I mean, it's dismaying to hear the turnover that there has been this year already.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I look at it, it's a few different strategies. Transfers, we got to look at using this TGT not only here, but as we go forward. We talked about, and he was built into the workforce housing analysis of using some of that money to do some funding for staffing. Eco Devo's hard because those are just projects that come up. So that was a little hard. Special alcohol has got a lot of qualifications on what you can spend it for, but I think we should look at it. We give over a couple $100,000 to the school district. Is there some way we could do that? Can we lower some police department cost by doing it? And again, won't be popular, but no increases to outside agencies, social service chambers, business organizations, cost recovery. Maybe we need to push that a little more to get it going. And then those are the, staff reductions and efficiencies. I mean, those are the 4 things I see to get this done.
Yeah, it's, the outside agencies is tough.
I'm not saying cut them.
No, having them ask, I'll come and ask for more it's a difficult, yeah, it's not. But also it's hard to justify, and I know some of them are, by the agencies will be considered investments, but, I'd love to invest in stocks that I don't have the money to buy right now, so.
The outside agency request in general fund is Adibus, and then social services.
Aggieville, downtown.
Well,
downtown.
no,
Well,
those
I'm
are
considering
those are in
all
TGT.
Right, but I want to.
Yeah, you wanna use those?
that money.
Well, we can use the 1.5,
use
but you're talking about
1.4.
more in the future.
There's about 400K in additional increases in the transient guest tax fund request this year than last year.
Yeah.
I think that's what Commissioner
Using
Mott was talking about.
and using some of those funds from there, we do have to look at revenue strategies. And if we keep just moving those over and aren't, I'm going to say like reinvesting those in those other services to boost sales tax dollars, it's a very nice way of looking at that. There's going to be a negative impact in the future. Not today, but there's going to be a negative impact if we're reducing what those organizations are getting, which are generating revenues.
Yeah, we're trying to buy time till some of those revenue
Well-
streams come in.
What I'm saying is, I don't know if those revenue streams will come in if we're shorting at different things. And that can be said across the board for everything. I think ideally we want everyone to be paid well. We don't want any open positions. We want, everything filled. And the reality is that's just not where we're at with our revenues.
So Jamie, are you primarily referencing Aggieville downtown?
On the revenue
Mentioned
producer side, on the CVB, yeah, downtown, those entities, I'm not saying that everyone should get everything that they want, but I think we have to find additional strategies to increase our revenues at some point, or it doesn't matter how much we try to control our expenses to an extent, because we're never going to be able to control them if our revenues don't get up. And I know we made the conscious decision and through discussions to not put the sales tax ballot question there because we maybe didn't have the confidence in it yet. We've had a lot of changes that I think changed some stuff. I do think we have property tax discussion that would not have been here if that sales tax was potentially on the ballot. And so we need to work on that for next year so that we can have some revenue strategies. I guess that's right. I just want us to look at, yes, we need to control our expenses, but we need to have some revenue strategies because it's not just going to, I don't think anyone can say it's just all of a sudden going to pick back up. So we have to be reinvesting in things that are going to increase our revenues. And a lot of that is Parks and Rec. They're increasing revenues. Yeah.
No, I think you're right, Jamie.
If I recall, I think that we had this discussion when we were interviewing candidates in terms of taking a look at costs of permits, cost of licensing, costs of, again, increasing some of those $5 or $10 is, not going to make a huge amount of difference, but do we need to do some forecasting and some modeling as to what an increase might yield? And maybe that's something to ask Rena to take a look at some point. I have a question circling back to Karen's comments when we began this discussion. I'm concerned about the impact of not even offering a cost of living increase. I have been receiving, the Kansas Mayors Association has had an open discussion for the last week or two where people have been sharing what increases staff have been receiving or are being budgeted for. And virtually everyone who has replied is indicating at a minimum a 3% cost of living increase. Now, that's biased in that not every single mayor in the state has replied. What's the bottom line that we are looking at if every staff member were to receive a cost of living increase? And what would that imply in terms of a reduction of other costs?
Your general fund payroll is 26 million a year. For every percent you consider, it's $260,000. So a 3% increase would be $780,000.
I mean, if we're looking at that, I'm going to get hammered for this one, then I think we realistically have to look at that additional property tax. When we looked at that, the model isn't the full 4, so that additional 0.8.
I see what you're saying.
But I was just throwing that out there as a discussion topic. Can't wait for that one to.
No, I had considered bringing that up, Susan, as well, because, you know, we had this huge increase the last 2-3 years because we implemented this pay plan because we hadn't been giving raises regularly. And then it was just this huge step. And we've seen that in some of our outside agency requests as well. And the argument is, well, we haven't asked for anything, any request or any increase for 10 years, and now we need to double it. Versus if it had been more incremental, we would be looking at a much lower increase this year. And I would like for us to explore if we could do at least something, throw them a bone. I mean, these people are.
Don't put it that way.
These people are working their hearts out.
And don't say these people. They're our staff, they're our community.
Sure.
Sorry.
You're right. Our staff is working their butts off to. Should I just write out what I want to say and have it proofread it? Anyways, they're working hard, and I've worked for the state, and I know what it's like to just put all your hopes and dreams on the minds of some legislators, whether or not you're going to get a raise. Now, counterpoint: some of these folks will get they'll get to the next. No, we won't do any of that.
You're not doing step either?
Okay, so that changes my assumption.
The only departments that have those built in are mainly our utilities.
Okay.
There are some promotions that in years past, when we've held the line, we haven't administered to. They'll come to our office, they'll be looked at, but typically it's like a class 1, 2, 3, 4 operator out at the treatment plant.
Yeah.
And when you think about the 26 million I told you in the general fund, that is not that budget. It is a separate budget. Now, the cost of living increase, which is across the board, is the one at the beginning of the year. The step or the anniversary date adjustment is typically factored in. The current salary ordinance and the policy that was adopted by the commission allows for a cost of living increase at the beginning of the year. It references keeping up with inflation. The step is typically between 2.5% and 4%. It's not typically, that's the way it's written, 2.5% to 4%. And if you've been here 7 years and over, it's 2.5%. If you've been here 7 and under, it's 4%. That's what we've implemented since the pay study. Those things would obviously be in jeopardy and potentially not occur. And I look at these numbers and I want to get back to the 38 million. It's a $1.9 million decrease $1.8 million decrease from our 2025 expenditures. And if you get into '24, it'd be a $680,000 decrease. So again, it's just, you're moving in two different directions with the discussion of paying people. The opportunity is through attrition and just not hiring back, but we're going to pay the folks that are here. You know, I can go with that. I mean, if we want to just even it out.
Yeah, but then
you know?
Are we going to keep those people that
Well,
we're paying more?
you got your challenges either way.
Yeah.
You really do.
And if I can add, the city doesn't have step increases like you're talking about that Riley County and Riley County Police Department have, where employees in a certain pay grade at whatever year they are, based on the pay grade, are paid a certain rate. We don't have step increases built in for any positions except at the operations for Manhattan Fire Department.
Okay.
We're not guaranteed an increase every year. What Jason was just talking about as a step is actually our pay for performance, which is merit increases that were approved by the city commission during the total reward study of that 2.5% or 4% based on where you are in the pay grade. But those are only after the budget is approved and the commission has approved a budget that would allow us to have a merit or a COLA increase as part of our annual compensation package.
Yeah, that 1.2 million, 2025 over 2024 projected, it's the cost of doing business. It's gas, it's electricity, it's IT, it's all the software charges, it's everything associated with what we do on a day-to-day. That's costing us $1.2 million more. It's not your people in those numbers. As far as the increase goes.
Right.
I just think we have to
26
make some hard decisions. I know I always come out, it's the hard, I won't say the word that comes after that, because that's because I lived through it. I went through with a company, the biggest retail bankruptcy in California history, and we had to figure out, we didn't get raises, we didn't do any of that, and we had some really good, hardworking people, and we just had to work our way through it and come out the other end. Went through it with another company, almost went Chapter 11. We were able to pull it off, but there was no raises and there was cuts, and we had to figure out how to get in the other end. There's some times where, you know, those are just the things you have to do.
It's tough when we've got a pretty large group of city employees that are going to get raises through collective bargaining.
I've had that issue too.
Yeah, it's just it's tough to you know, look at the folks who are not part of that group and say, look, I know these people are, you know, we've got police department, they're getting raises. It's tough. So, yeah.
I don't want to disrupt the momentum of our discussion, but I'm going to disrupt the momentum of our discussion and suggest we take a 5-minute break.
Sure.
So please, well, it's 8:12, we'll resume at 8:17. You already approved it. Oh.
So
I'm not.
That's-
I really,
that's such-
whatever you need to hear, though.
No, I don't
need to.
and says, hey, I found you worked this out. For most people.
I wasn't sure what to do tonight.
Because that's when I need.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, so yeah, just be on the
Today or-
lookout. Yeah, today.
Okay. I won't erase it. I don't know how to erase erase the whole thing.
Commissioner Minton, calling Commissioner Minton. Thank you. We will now resume this evening's work session. And who's up next?
That concludes our presentations. If you wanted either public comment or more questions for staff, it's up to you all.
Commissioners, you just heard this, right? So
Yeah.
do we have additional comments, questions for staff on the presentations?
I have a question from, I think perhaps Rena. Is there a way that I could get some of this in, or like the high level budget stuff in an Excel document?
In terms of what particular part of the information?
Like the,
Yeah, everything we have is in Excel.
Yeah.
But
There's a lot of them.
yeah, I'll try to be more specific, I get some more specific requests too, but
okay.
I like Excel, so.
Okay.
Do we, yes.
Yeah, I would just say, I think 3+ is too much. People, it's, we're gonna have to go up from the property level, but not that much. And I hope next week we can kind of figure some ways to jiggle some things around. And if it must be, we can transfer more money from our carryover. I know it's important to have that, but we had better bond ratings when we only carried over $1 million back in 2012. So I just think we've got to think about people's bills when they get them.
Jamie?
Oh, well, I don't know that I like this idea. We could talk about TGT tax and the percentage that it's at. I don't know that I like the idea, but in talking about creating additional revenue streams that don't necessarily directly impact like Manhattan residents, it's been since 2019 that it's been at 7.5%.
Is there sales tax paid on?
Yes.
Yes.
On top.
It's
It's a combination, so it's the 915 plus
Plus.
the 7.5. And in years past, the CVB has hired consultants to kind of try to get a gauge as to where the threshold is in Manhattan for tolerance. But it's been a while, so I don't know what that is.
Can I ask Marcia a question? If Marcia, is that okay? Sure. If an expert, yeah, can we call an expert?
Hey, you
I don't
didn't have
know.
to be
Am I
here
allowed
tonight.
to do that? I mean, Marcia, we don't have to have that decision tonight. I'm just wondering if that's something that the CVB can study and give a recommendation on?
Into that question, we would want to be careful, right? Because it does have effects. I don't remember the history off the top of my head of when we've done incremental increases, but we have. The last time was July 1st of 2019, that we went up to 7.5. We would look at our comp set across the state and where we would fall, as well as the Midwest. We want to not price ourselves out.
I mean, I just think looking at that and working with Rena and her team and if we're putting everything on the table, let's put everything on the table. Or there's probably more to put on the table. That's what I know of, so.
Franchise fees as well.
Oh,
I
Yeah,
actually asked that question earlier today.
thank you, Marcia,
and-
sorry.
Oh, thank you, Marcia. Jason indicated that we may be at the max on many of the franchise fees by
Okay.
state statute.
All right.
But we can give you that
Sure.
list as well and tell you what the max is for statute. Yeah. Yeah.
For myself, first I want to thank all the department heads and the staff who worked on your budget submissions. I very much appreciate your efforts. I trust you all did it conscientiously and aware of the positions that we would be in if we need to raise taxes. I would like to just suggest that you go back one more time and see if what would be the possibility of our being able to ensure a cost of living increase for next year.
I would second that.
I may be asking you to get blood. I may be asking you to get blood from a stone, but if you could look once more at, I don't know, you talked about using your computer systems to be more efficient. Maybe there's a few reams of paper that can get tossed out.
I don't think we use paper anymore.
Huh.
Might I just throw something out for the sake of conversation? And I don't know what type of impact it would even have, but could we consider, those increases for people of a certain level and below, at least, below director level, sorry, to you directors, but can we at least look at that? Because those are the positions that I think will be most impacted by any type of increase, and they are the ones that turn over the most. So I mean, if we can, if we have to make concessions, can we try and look at something like that?
K-State, when they were not really paying raises, did look at putting money in base, a fixed amount. And so then, everybody got $5,000 or something. And, I mean, it didn't get that much, but anyway, yeah, $1,000. And so, obviously, the people on the lower end, that was much more of an impact than it was on the higher end. So you could look at something like that, to put something in base that would help people out, especially the people at the lower end.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do, only got this approved maybe twice in my career, is you just, give it to the discretion of management, saying we're not building anything in the budget for an increase, but it's your discretion. You're managing it, you do what you want, but, we're not going to put an extra 3% in there. You just have to figure it out. A key employee, you figure to have to do something, you do it. It's tough to manage, but though it's worked a couple occasions, I got it.
Commissioners, should we open for public comment at this point? We will now take public comment. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to make any remarks.
Come on up, Gary.
Don't start the timer yet, please. I have a question. Okay, no, just kidding. I'll get started. Oh, Gary Oles, 3308 Frontier Circle, Manhattan. Once again, what a very interesting discussion. Challenging, intricate, complicated. Staff did a great job of presenting, I guess we'd call the facts. I'd like to bring you back to a time several meetings ago. In fact, it's so many meetings ago, I'm sure none of you remember it, without a doubt. I said one thing from this podium way back when, and that related to personnel cost, if you remember it. You 5 commissioners representing the people of Manhattan. You can finish. Representing the people of Manhattan. You've got to find a way to control your personnel costs. You got to find a way. And I don't mean this year. You need to figure it out for the next 10 years in terms of controlling it. Yeah, we have great people. I've never heard of any company that ever said, we have lousy people. Of course, everybody's hardworking. Because if they weren't hardworking, you guys, the directors, would free up their future, as we like to say in the corporate world, and they'd be working somewhere else. So yeah, everybody works hard. Now, does everybody work efficiently? I don't know, but I bet you could talk to some people around town who go, why are there 5 people over there working on that pothole and 2 of them are just watching? You know, they're going to question those things. So as you know from the presentations, I'm not telling you anything new. Personnel cost is the biggest thing you need to deal with. Yes, you might have to deal with revenue and figure out a way to make more money off the TGT. I understand that Geary County is proposing, informally at this point in time, a 2% increase in their TGT, you know, because they need to bring it up because they want to do a sports complex someday if they ever get around to it and have enough money. Here's, with my 3 minutes left, here's one thing I want to throw out. You all need to figure out how to answer this question. And you can't read it from here, but you read it a long time ago. And it's Ned's question. We'll call it Ned's question. Why are we in this budget mess? Please articulate to the public, the media, exactly why we're in this budget mess. You hit on it tonight very well. I mean, but try to boil it down so that Ned can write a follow-up and explain to the public why we're in this mess. Okay? And there's lots of factors. If I heard correctly, it's a lack of revenue and too much expense in a nutshell. Of course, isn't that our life as family members? It's not that we don't have enough revenue, it's we have too many expense, or it's not that we have too many expense, we just don't have enough revenue, depending on how you look at it. I'm going to throw out a couple other things. Just to clarify with you, is Keats in 66503 zip code? I think it is, because you said Keats was included, and they're not in USD 383. That's what threw me off. It's not a big deal. I'm not challenging you. By the way, you gave me a great education on Parks and Rec the last time I was here. I had no idea. So I do thank you. This article in the paper said a 14% increase. Hey, I got my R&R statement, and I'll bet you got yours. And mine said, I am privileged to give 18.32%. So I'm not average. I'm above average, and I feel good about that. I'm just being tongue-in-cheek. The big problem, big picture, I think you talked about the 150 mills that you were talking about, alluded to earlier. You're just a small part of the problem. Riley County's doing a better job. You're trying to do a better job, which is very noble. And Karen, you've been at this a long time, so everybody's in there pitching together, trying to figure it out, trying to do a better job. But that school district's a mess, financially. It is. I mean, now it may be reality, and it may be a mess in every other school district in the state of Kansas. I don't know. I get confused in the numbers because you throw out so many numbers and you do such a great job of it that I went down and saw the county clerk, and I got the county clerk budget information for 2025 budget. And it seems to me, if I'm reading it wrong, which I could be, please forgive me if I am in my 33 seconds that are left, a mill is worth about $661,000. There's probably more in here that's missing or updated, right? Just, right? We can dialogue a little, no? But here's the big problem, and I've said this time and time again, and you need to emphasize this to the public. And I think you said it. This is 2024's revenue neutral statement. I didn't bring 2025. I was going to ask it from Rena, but I didn't ask her ahead of time for a copy. But 28 mills is going to RCPD. You guys are running the city on 21.87 mills. That's pretty noble. But this is the problem. Excuse me. This is part of the problem, and you know it. Sorry about going over.
Just real quick, Manhattan's in 2 counties. So you got the Manhattan valuation in Riley County.
So the rest is Potawatomi County. That would make perfect sense. But please continue and explain this to the public, because that couple that left earlier that you got to talk with, Jamie, they remind me of the couple last year that showed up at RCPD's R&R hearing, and they got up and said, we're on a fixed income. We can't stay here long term. And you know that. And keep up the good fight, because it's a lot of hard work. I know it is.
Thank you, Gary, for keeping us on track.
Hi, folks. David Joltowski, 100 South Delaware. We need more revenue, right? One of my concerns on the revenue side is trying to become more active in donations. but also in the process of becoming more active in getting donations. I think we need to be concerned of when does the city commission give up power to the people who are donating. So I think from a policy standpoint, you need to look at separating what we want to do and what we want to fund from what people want to donate to. I've had a lot of experience in that. I'm running this project. We got a $5 million donation, but they didn't want to pay any direct costs, which are another $2.5 million. So it's costing us a lot of money to take that $5 million. So I think you need to look at what you want to fund before you necessarily take a donation. So the example tonight was we've got a new Park and Rec Foundation board who are deciding who they're going to fund. So I think there should be a separate Park and Rec policy to say, hey, these are the people who have to pay and what they have to pay. And then we can ask other people to donate money to contribute to supporting that program. I think it's very dangerous when you say to a small group of people who are now in power of this little foundation, hey, you're going to fund kids in the school district because we were going to pay for it. Well, it's not their decision. It should be your decision on what the city of Manhattan is offering. And then look for people to donate to fund universal physical activity if that's what you want to do. So, and I think that also extends to some of the other stuff, right? I've heard that we're fundraising now for more zoo stuff. I don't know any details on that. But we're running a $1.5 million deficit on the cost of the zoo now. Maybe we should be funding operations from donations before we start building anything. Okay, so I do think policy-wise, try to separate what we want to offer and then ask people to donate. And I think we need to get more aggressive in fundraising around donating. You know, Park and Rec and physical activity stuff is my thing. It gets a little tricky, right? We talked about moving to a 1% sales tax to protect these types of services that always get cut under financial problems. The challenge in that is it's going to take some time to build support for something like that. But when you get into that, the question becomes, well, who decides? You know, what programs are free and what aren't? It's pretty tricky, right? What is a collective benefit? 20% of the adult population is diabetic. It's costing us all this money in our health care taxes. If they played adult sports and moved, we would have decreased health care costs. So the argument is that it's a private benefit for adults to have sport rather than a collective benefit. Technically, universal PA is a collective benefit. If everyone was active, we'd have much lower health care costs. So it gets tricky. So I do think we need to work on that. It's going to take some time. You know, Aaron's working on that. But we need to figure out, you know, how do we really move to universal physical activity and who gets it and how we fund it. The final thing is it gets even trickier. And I'm not sure about this, but my understanding is we have 5 elementary schools in the school district now going to the collective benefit option or the community benefit option with free and reduced lunch. That means that families aren't doing paperwork anymore. So they are going to have to complete some sort of form to get Park and Rec now under that new 5 schools, I think, community benefit options. Now, you know, you're going to say, well, why do we have that federal program? Well, we have that because it's easier to give away lunch to everybody than administer the paperwork and the program and select those who get it and those don't. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Jowoltowski. I live at 100 South Delaware Avenue. My concern tonight is about the proposed fees to be added for the rec centers. And I'm sure that seems like a pretty incidental thing tonight in the broader budget situation. But the 2017 sales tax that paid for those facilities was promoted to voters by saying that there would be no daily user fee. That was part of what was promoted with the sales tax, that if you vote for this, there won't be any user fees to use them. And I know the reason now for charging is, well, conditions have changed. But that's always the story. Conditions have changed. We were supposed to get 12 tennis courts, but now we're going to get 8 because conditions have changed. And the reason why I think this might matter is I'm concerned about the message that this sends. It was discussed even tonight that in the maybe not so distant future, a sales tax might be put before voters. And that sales tax may be promoted as promising XYZ is going to happen. But the message that I'm hearing from this decision to start charging fees for rec centers is that whatever gets promoted, we're going to promise XYZ, well, that will just be for a few years while it's still convenient. But once it becomes inconvenient, we're not going to do that anymore. Or we're not going to build those 12 tennis courts because it's not convenient. So I just want you to think about that. What message are you sending to voters if there's a future sales tax? That if you start charging fees for these rec centers, you're going back on what was promised when we voted for that there would not be daily user fees. And now you're saying, times have changed. So next time when there's a sales tax and you promise whatever, I'm going to assume that whatever's promised isn't really going to be a long-term promise. It's just going to be for as long as it's convenient. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks, Kathy. Is there anyone else who would like to say anything in public comment? In that case, we'll close public comment, and do we have an update from our city manager?
We do. I'm aware you're out of town next week. We have a radio show. Karen, could you make it Tuesday morning at 9?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll get that out.
I can do 8.
9, right. We'll get that out on your calendar. We do have some upcoming meetings. A lot of you have responded. Keep AUSA in your mind. I think some of you I have verified you're not going to go. I think the mayor is tentative at this point in time. That'll be the second day for your new city manager, which I doubt actually be the first day, the 14th. So she's more than likely going to stick around. So Wyatt and Jared and I and Kristen will talk about accompanying the mayor on the AUSA trip. So Susan is speaking at the Established Business Leaders Coffee on Friday, September 6th. Intergov on August 26th. And Joint City County, if you've got items, August 15th. That's in the past. I'm sorry, it's still on here. But the next one, we have canceled these the last couple times. So if there's anything that comes to mind that you'd like us to talk about, please let us know. That's all I have here.
I do think at the, K-State one, it's
The
intergovernmental.
Intergov.
We talked about if Danielle could present in October, November, or November, December?
I think it was a little bit later, yeah.
Yeah, but sometime at the end of the year, they were looking for that and thought that'd be a good idea, so if that could just get somewhere on the schedule.
Thank you.
I will also be out of town. The Roger Schultz Park is going to be dedicated October 4th, I believe. It was, there had been a date change, and I was asked to just give some welcoming remarks. I will not be here at that time as well, so
Sure, I can.
Karen, or we can pass it down the line. Okay,
Got it down.
okay, all right. Thank you all very much. Thank you for
Can I
a,
just say,
yeah.
I really, really don't think we should micromanage, and you're in charge of who you hire and who you fire. But I do think there are some programs, and I'm just going to throw this out, the barriers-free theater. There was some talk about canceling that last year, but it hasn't been, and it's been supported. And things like that, I think we need to make a a commission decision on, and CDBG and that kind of thing. Not the person, not the staff, but whether we think that's something we should encourage the department head to do.
So Karen, there's a priorities-based budgeting process that I would really like for us to go through. It requires quite a bit of engagement with the community, with staff, and it basically lists all of the programs that we have and their total cost. And we prioritize them, and if we have to make, if there's a, we got to make cuts, then we start at the bottom and go up until we hit that dollar amount.
Start at the top and come down.
Well, we start at the bottom of priorities, right?
Yeah.
And I would love for us to do that, because then we can have that very clearly, published somewhere or whatever. But it does take a lot of legwork. So that's something that I hope we can try and start at the beginning of next year.
And I don't want me to tell Stephanie or Aaron who to hire, who to fire. I just mean that in certain specific instances, we maybe need to have a discussion about whether that's a thing that the city wants to do.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
where that would kind of shake all of that out.
Not to go back to the budget discussion, but Jason, did you get a direction from, I mean, this is a work session to get a direction. I don't want us to come back next week or the following week and say, didn't feel like I don't know that I feel like we had a consensus a certain way, so I just want to make sure before we adjourn that that's clear.
Yeah, tonight's purpose was really, once again, to educate you all on what the general fund is operating at this year, what it's projected to operate at next year. Next week, you will give us direction on the budget, to publish, and the mill levy. So you're out right now at 4 mills for an increase on the revenue neutral rate, but you haven't established an overall budget. Next week, we'll give you a proposed overall budget and a modified mill levy. You can tell us what you want us to publish. Publishing doesn't approve it. September 3rd is the first hearing and the first reading of an ordinance. September 17th will be the night you actually make a decision. So really, it's more about what do you need to make that decision in September. And next week, we'll give you all the special revenue funds. We'll combine all the general fund, the utilities. We'll give you a more detailed explanation of the utilities on the 27th, but you really don't start voting until September.
But do you have what you need from us for next week? Because you're supposed to give us a proposed budget next week. I mean, were you feeling good about directions that were?
Not really. So what you're
Okay.
gonna see, what you saw
That's what I was,
tonight,
that's what I was wondering.
what you saw tonight is coming right back at you. So
Great.
think about it and where you want it to land for where you want to publish, really.
Okay.
And we can't go higher than what we did before, and when we do this next number, it's the same thing.
Correct. You cannot go higher. You can bring it down.
I would like some numbers about putting $1,000 or $2,000 in base. We kind of have an idea about the COLA costs. Thank you.
And can we still get that number from the county on what's the increase for residential and commercial?
Rebecca, do you remember it off the top of your head? I know we've got some numbers. You did some calculations. We can get it to you, John. Yeah.
I'm assuming it's fairly close, because there hasn't been Ned hasn't jumped up and down about
Yeah.
anything yet on that. And then from a scheduling standpoint, I'll be gone from October 21st through November 4th. So I'll miss one meeting, and the other one would be a fifth Tuesday.
I will hopefully be back October 29th.
When you're leaving.
I'm gone October 23rd through the 28th, and assuming all flights go as planned.
Yeah, there's no hurry.
So, we're going to Orlando. But if John's gone,
It's likely. It's likely.
oh wait, that's a fifth.
Either a
That's a
fourth or
fifth.
fifth.
Never mind.
And we can move items off that night if we need to.
Any other housekeeping? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn the August 23rd, 2024 Commission Work Session.
It's the
Second?
13th, not the 23rd.
Yeah, 13th, that's what I meant.
Motion to adjourn has been made. Commissioner Opel,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Commissioner Minton,
Yes.
Mayor Adamczyk,
Yes.
Commissioner McCullough.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Yay.
We are adjourned.